The State Department now confirming that Secretary of State Mike Pompeo will be traveling to North Korea next week. Joining me now, Virginia Congressman Scott Taylor, who is a former Navy SEAL. Thank you very much for your time this morning, sir. Your reaction to that is just now coming into us from the State Department.
Well, it's great to be with you again. Thanks for having me. Look, I like this approach. There's no question about it when you're, engaging at this high level of diplomacy and building trust and being there and have taken a hands-on approach will enable Secretary Pompeo to be able to fill in some of these gaps and put some meat on the bones, if you will, to have actual details in this plan to move forward that we can obtain. Of course, it's going to take persistent diplomacy to be able to actually get some accomplishments in terms of this nuclear deal. So I like the fact that he's staying very engaged and going over there and meeting with Kim.
We'll await more information on that. The only other bit of information we have there is that Pompeo will be joined by the State Department's new special representative for North Korea, a man who was just announced to that position. Is the strategy there working, Congressman?
The strategy in North Korea?
Yeah.
Well, look, I don't think anybody was under any illusions that this was going to be a quick thing, right? There were some historic moves there. You haven't seen missile tests. You haven't seen nuclear tests. You have had some reports of them engaging in still some activity there. You've seen better relations with the South, of course. You just had some pictures of reuniting families for the first time since the Korean War. So I think it's moving in the right direction. But this is something that's been going on for a couple of decades, right? So I'm under no illusion that's going to be very quick, and I'm cautiously optimistic that this approach will bear results.
Meanwhile, we're left wondering whether or not the strategy, the White House strategy in Russia is working. The president was asked about this in this exclusive interview on Fox, and here's what he had to say.
My meeting with Putin was a tremendous success. I got killed by the fake news. They wanted me to go up and punch him in the face. I said, I want to get along with Russia. I want to get along with everybody. They said I was too rough on North Korea. Remember that? Too rough. But with Putin, they said I was too soft. My meeting with Putin was a tremendous success.
Is the strategy there working?
Well, I think, you have to look at it from a couple different angles. Number one, there were things that, obviously in that presser that I was not happy with. At the same time, you look at, we should get along with them in some respects and frenemies, if you will, in certain areas. But there's no question that they've been bad actors in Syria and Ukraine and subverting Western democracies. So it's important to have tough measures on them. And I will say this, the House and the Senate, signed by the president, passed new authorities for the president to put sanctions on Russia. There have been some strong sanctions. In Syria, there were hundreds of Russian soldiers who were unmarked, by the way, that were killed because they came within danger close to some of our allied folks. So there's been some tough actions against Russia, and obviously the sanctions that just happened with the freezing of their assets, $5 billion.
It's a big deal.
By the Swiss banks.
And we're running that banner down there. Credit Suisse has frozen $5 billion of Russian money due to these U.S. sanctions. And of course, we know that Switzerland is one of the most important destinations for money and for the wealthy, for that money leaving Russia. So how overall are you seeing that these new sanctions are affecting Moscow?
Well, you're having reports of Moscow and Russia, of course, shoring up their gold reserves in response. And so they're definitely having an effect. There's no question a lot of Russian elite put their money in Swiss banks because of political stability and things like that. And now you're hurting that. So, and the president has the authority and the ability to step it up if necessary for imports and exports and in Russia as well. So I think that you have to have a balance. There's no question. And I've been an advocate in terms of having a policy for the United States that tells the world that they will not interfere with our elections or our power grids or our financial systems in cyberspace. I think that's long overdue. We have to have a definition of what constitutes an act of war, act of aggression, or even an act of disruption. But I think you have to take a balance between Russia because there are things that we have to work with them on the international stage, no question. But at the same time, they need to know where they will not go in terms of meddling with our elections or anything in our power grid or in cyberspace.
Yeah, it's a big message sent as far as the move by Credit Suisse there with the $5 billion in assets. Congressman Scott Taylor, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Well,